London is once again pouring out its sweet syrup of a first step, and the number 54 minutes has already become a televised symbol of hope. Harry walked into Clarence House to see his father for tea, and people, accustomed to believing in miracles, instantly heard in the clink of teacups the promise of a future family photo, the king with his grandchildren, smiles, Balmoral in the background, warm tartan blankets, and an awkward but sincere attempt to start everything anew. One wants to believe. But this story already carries too many familiar smells: optics, conditions, perimeters, silence, though only pre-negotiated silence. And the louder the phrase first step is repeated, the clearer the real question sounds. Is this a step toward family, or just a step toward a new contract on intimacy? Start with the number. 54 minutes is a very convenient unit of time for a press narrative. A quarter-hour meeting sounds like an insult, an hour and a half sounds like too much, but 54 minutes. That's almost a full hour, almost grown up, almost genuine. It is in this word almost that the entire story lives. Almost reconciled. Almost agreed. Almost will meet again. Almost the children will come. Almost without conditions. Almost without leaks. Almost without cameras. Even Harry's supposed promise not to brief the press about the content of the talk is built from this almost. If you must specifically negotiate silence at the table, then silence stopped being the norm long ago. It now has to be purchased, discussed, signed like a new NDA for a family conversation. Then comes the grandfather angle. It is very easy to sell people on the storyline the king just wants to be a grandfather. It is human. It rises above the court and titles. It unties any knot, turning a monarch into an ordinary elderly man who misses children's voices. We don't doubt that it's true. But precisely for that reason grandfather becomes the perfect bait in any reset. Grandfather is the argument you cannot criticize, sweet, warm, defenseless. Say no, and you are a villain attacking the most sacred. Say yes, and you instantly find yourself in a corridor of conditions. Where exactly will they meet? Who will lock down the perimeter? Which house fits the security protocol? How to slot the children into the schedule so that no one ends up in an unwanted photo impossible to erase? Come to Balmoral or Sandringham, it's safer there. This sounds like an invitation, but reads like a verdict on trust. In an open city, we no longer know how to meet, only behind other people's walls and metallic barriers. Meanwhile, the old wound of security resurfaces. Years pass, but the foundation of the bargaining never changes. A visit is possible, but only with guarantees, only with armed cover, only with the correct protocol, only where the king's protection also equals their protection. Inside this only lies the key to every previous failure. When care becomes a condition, it stops being care. When silence is written up as a clause, it stops being silence. When grandfather appears as a bargaining chip, he stops being just a grandfather. Every human spark gets smothered under a glass dome of procedure. You can look at it, but you can't live it. William, separately. He wasn't in the meeting, but he knew everything, and that is exactly the distance he has been protecting for years. That's why the standby press lines sound so comical. In families, there always comes a time for agreements. In families, yes. But that applies to families whose family matters don't become serial dramas. Here the elder brother has watched for years as every word turned into a quote, every pause into an accusation, every gesture into proof. He may be the first to grasp the simple fact: a genuine first step is not another visit, but the absence of visits in the media. Not an appearance, but a disappearance. Not explanation, but abstaining from explanation. Until that happens, all tea-time meetings are just negotiations about format. It is telling how quickly after Clarence House Harry slipped back into the role that is comfortable for him. The hall, the stage, a funny quip about being late and you've probably already had a drink. That is his safest plane of existence, warm, relatable, with no jagged edges. Next to that, 54 minutes becomes nothing more than a prologue, ready to be spun into whatever legend is useful. If no agreements come, they'll say it was a step toward a step. If they do, a little sensation will be announced: grandfather with grandchildren at the residence, but always in private. The circle closes. Private will once again be sealed into private, because otherwise it cannot withstand Harry's habit of explaining the world through himself. Harry regrets, wants a reboot. This line will hook many. Repentance is a strong magnet. But repentance has a form that ignores cameras, long and silent. It stretches over months, years. It survives coldness without demanding warmth on schedule. Here, however, the schedule is visible again. Next year, when it's safe, when we find a way. All those whence are safety nets for someone who fears silence more than failure. Failure is loud, you can narrate it. Silence is mute, you must endure it. The most delicate detail in this whole composition is the promise not to brief. This is not just good manners. It is an admission, otherwise, I don't know how. I have so long turned the personal into the public that now I need a signed paper just to stay quiet. In that instant it becomes clear why monarchy, for all its old-fashioned image, is stronger than any media machine. Its entire survival rests on things unspoken and unseen, private conversations, unvoiced understandings, traditions that need no evidence base. That is why it endures. And that is why it wounds most those who grow addicted to transferring every emotion into a broadcast set. Of course, there is also the fairy tale of grandchildren in Balmoral. It's easy to picture, walks over heather, closed gates, faces familiar but distant, neutral topics, garden, weather, dogs. At night, one short photo from afar, and everyone will say, see, anything is possible. Possible, yes. But will it be life? Or just another short truce in a long war? Reconciliation is not geography, not fences, not security schedules. Reconciliation is when you can step outside the gates without fearing that the world will hear what was never meant for it. That is still a long way off. And 54 minutes is unlikely to shorten that path. Now about the spark of hope. The briefing phrase an important first step harms mostly those who believe it. It inflates expectations, turning every natural pause into a sign. People will wait by the end of the year, then by next summer, then by Christmas. Every date not filled with real work on silence becomes another reason for resentment. That is how the series survives, it feeds on expectation. Family, by contrast, survives by reducing expectation. The less you demand from the other, the greater the chance they find the strength to come. The fewer tricks, the more reality. The fewer cameras, the more truth. And the truth now is this: the king is an old father forced to be stronger than he is. Harry is an adult son who needs to become quieter than he's ever been. William is an elder brother who has chosen life without scriptwriters. Meghan is a wife still at the symbolic center of conditions, even when she's physically absent from the frame. The children are hostages of other people's security rules, not understanding why they can only see their grandfather in places closed to everyone else. No one here is a villain by profession. But each has a reflex, and that reflex is stronger than any first steps. What remains for us, the spectators? Not to buy into almost. Not to confuse silence with collusion, or perimeters with warmth. Not to treat 54 minutes as proof when proof will be measured not in time, but in the absence of leaks. Not to wait for next year, but to watch today. Will they endure a week, a month, half a year without someone, even through friends, rattling another truth about how the meeting really went? And yes, here is our moral blow, not to humiliate, but to remind of the obvious, without which no grandchildren will save any household. Love cannot be transported in motorcades. It is not guarded by security details. It does not live under NDAs, and it does not like numbers in press releases. It cannot be inflated with the phrase first step, because the real first step always happens without witnesses. If Harry truly wants a grandfather for his children, he will have to do what he rarely does better than others: disappear. Not from the country. From the narrative. From the habit of justifying himself. From the temptation to explain himself to the world. Then, maybe, on one of those days, not next year, but simply someday, we will see not almost, but simply, children, grandfather, home. And silence, where no one needs to prove anything.